understanding things from a higher time frame perspective or a higher time frame narrative is just going to put you in such a winning seat in the market, provided you have the patience to allow these things to sort of happen. So I've just drawn in a schematic of a very high probability setup and a couple different areas in which you can take trades in the foreseeable future, provided that this ends up mapping out the way that I have it drawn, which obviously doesn't necessarily need to happen. But if and when it does happen, and you understand what the higher time frame is doing, and obviously it's very simple in our case. I mean, the market is making a series of lows, lower highs, and the next level should be a lower low in theory. Now, we don't need to necessarily swing for this level. There's all kinds of ways that we can capitalize in between, more of like an intraday profit taking strategy, but it's good to just be aware of what these things are and where these areas are, so that when they do end up developing, it's going to be a lot easier to capitalize on the moves. So for us, the way that we trade in our community is very simple. We want to trade pro trend, pro order flow, right? So this is 4-hour chart, 4-hour schematic. Obviously, there's all kinds of things that can happen in here. Some form of structure shift on the M15, which could get us involved at the very, very top, and then confirming this area right here with the same thing, 1 minute, and then right here, 5-second, same thing, right? So understanding what the next move in the market is. Bottom line is if this was a 1 minute chart, I mean, the only way that we would trade this short would be if we came down and created liquidity to basically target, and then we could take this as like a limit order or whatever, confirmation order to then take this low out. And the higher time frame is no different. That's kind of like the cool part about the markets is, I don't want to be the guy that drops like the fractal nature of the market, but I mean, quite literally, whatever happens on one time frame is, 9 out of 10 times it's happening on another one, right? So it's when you correlate all these time frames together, that's really going to, kind of give you that competitive edge in the market. So ideal circumstances for me right now, we have an unmitigated demand range, right? We're really high in price. Am I super interested in longs? Not really. Am I going to take them? Probably, if they line up the way that I'd like them to. So if and when we come down into here, into like this 4-hour demand range or this probably 8-hour block, whatever it is, you can bet your ass I would look for an order flow realignment to then take this up into potential sell territory, right? Again, I don't necessarily believe that this schematic is going to work out to a T. I am just trying to introduce a concept of understanding where high probability areas are. So high probability area number 1, with the way that this is drawn right now, is right here, okay? This is high probability area number 1. Demand right here, okay? We can take this into probably weak highs coming up into our flip zone, okay? So that is the first move that I would look to capitalize on if and when it sort of happens, and then we can take this into here, which would in turn clear out liquidity, right? Liquidity to take. It would also create liquidity to target, and then we could start looking at pro structure, higher time frame moves. Now, obviously, we would be counter trend, counter order flow right here. So what we would basically need to see is some form of a 15-minute internal structure break, basically watching for this to have some form of liquidity to take like this into the more extreme. Once we come up into here, we can then look for a 1-minute realignment, and then furthermore a 5-second realignment to confirm the area even further and possibly squeeze out a little bit more risk to reward. So all that to say, high probability setup number 1 is somewhere in here potentially. High probability setup number 2 is here if and when we get the appropriate confirmations to get liquidity to take into our POY, right? Liquidity to target, and then the same thing. We want to see that, again, realignment, liquidity to take into this area, liquidity to target out of it, order flow shift in the middle. So that's number 2. Let me just go like this. So number 1 is here, number 2 is here, number 3, right? And when you start to break down these trades like this and you start to watch how it develops, and if and when it develops this exact way, man, it's just so easy to be like, okay, well, this is what's happening. The only area that really makes sense to even look for trades from is going to be in this area. In order for me to squeeze out, 20, 30, 50, 100R, depending on how the setup ends up showing itself, right? So the next area is when we come into our demand range right here, right? Here's another point. It's a pivot point, right? So you have to remember that all of our stuff is reversal model. So if we come into this level now, this is high probability area number 3. If we come into this level, and let's say we hit some form of a refined area, okay, and then we get a 15-minute order flow shift, something like this, okay, that changes internal structure. We tap in, and then we're able to run this into our flip zone, right? That's the next area, because now order flow, higher time frame wise, is aligned to come back down, right? We can still capitalize on the move from here to here. So high probability move number 3 is here, provided we get the right confirmations and internal structure breaks to put us into an M15 Pro internal structure format to get us up into potentially this high right here. High probability section number 4 is sitting right here, right? So the next area in which we're going to look for trades is going to be in this flip zone. Is this going to be the one that takes out this low? With the way that price is sitting right now, I don't think so. And the reason why is because we have unmitigated demand levels along the way. If all of this was mitigated like this and everything was perfectly efficient, I would say that reasonably, if we came into a flip zone, we would probably be able to say that we could take out this low. But as it stands right now, with the way that price looks in our specific schematic here, I don't think that that's a logical area to basically see a new low from. Doesn't mean it won't happen. It just means that I don't think it's as likely as the schematic that I've sort of gotten drawn in here. So, okay, we get involved here. If we get involved here, we have a supply to demand zone. Doesn't necessarily take liquidity, but what happens is we now have a weak low on an order flow shift that aligns in this level. And the reason why this is a weak low is because if the 15-minute in this 4-hour POY sort of right in here ends up aligning something along the lines like this, oh my god, almost the same fucking thing over and over, right? Then we can start to look for confirmations on the 1 minute and then taking this further down, which would then take us into this EOF low. Now, what happens here is once this actually happens and we take this high probability setup number 4, we can now take this into these weak lows, right? We create liquidity for this move. Well, now if we create liquidity for this move like this, we can then start to look at liquidity to take and where's the targeted liquidity, right? Like that's where are the orders sitting? That's constantly the area that you need to be focusing on, is where are orders sitting right now in relation to higher time frame? Where is the money likely to travel to next so that we can get on with the higher time frame narrative, right? So it's very simple. I mean, in this specific circumstance, if we have equals to basically be had here, the idea is that we will sweep down through here. We can then look at an extreme refinement that's aligned with 4-hour structure, whatever it might be, and start potentially looking to take this trade into our liquid region, right? So we don't necessarily need to aim for the extreme. We could basically aim for something up here to just be basically conservative with our profit taking. And once this actually happens, you'll see that now we have a new form of liquidity to take, which is across here, which is basically what we know as inducement. Once we actually take liquidity out of the market across these levels right here, so this is a high probability area number 5 to take this up into this level. Once we start to take liquidity from the market right here, what have we now produced? Well, we've now produced equal lows, right? Now, we will only know that this low is weak once we take liquidity from here and we see an order flow realignment, right? OFRA. So once we realign with what the higher time frame is doing after taking liquidity from the market, we can then assume that these are going to be targeted lows, and this is basically high probability setup number 6. These are not in the specific order in which I would say they are high probability. I think the absolute best areas are going to be number 1, number 2, and number 3. And the reason why is because all of these align with what the higher time frame is already trying to do. but you need to understand, and this is a beautiful example of how profit taking is so vital in the market, and how to understand where to take profits. Now, we wouldn't be looking to trade here. We wouldn't be looking to trade here. Why? Well, there might be a reaction on a lower time frame that might push us down. But the bottom line with this is that we need a level of liquidity to take on the 4-hour, the 5-second, and everything in between to be able to basically satisfy one side of the market, to be able to push orders in the opposing direction or the intended direction. So I hope this finds you well, guys, and I hope that this sort of clears things up. Now, again, I don't want you to take this. Sorry, I would like you to take this with a grain of salt in terms of how this schematic is laid out. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lay out exactly like this. I'm saying an optimal setup, an absolutely picture perfect setup for me to be able to capitalize on this over the course of the next 3, 4, 5 weeks as this sort of develops, whatever or however long this really takes, a couple of weeks probably. If it develops something similar to this, you'll have a really, really good idea of how I'm viewing things day to day, week to week, hour by hour, and how to sort of set your limits in terms of how we should be looking to trade this. So I hope this makes sense. If there's any questions at all, feel free to hit me up. I'm going to try to do a lot more of these for you guys in the next few weeks as price develops. And what I will do is probably every single week, I'll do a little video off to the side to be able to kind of keep up with what the higher time frames are already doing, and be able to kind of confirm what it is that I'm looking for if and when it happens. So thanks for watching.